On June 22, 1941, German forces launch Operation Barbarossa. On July 7, 1942, they have expanded their eastern front by almost 400 miles into Ukraine and Belorussia. Hitler's next target? The Caucasus Mountains. The easiest way to do this is to cut off transportation and then attack the undersupplied and outnumbered Soviet troops. Stalingrad was the perfect spot to attack. It was the intersection of 3 major railroads and had one of the only major bridges crossing the Volga River. It also bore the name of Russia's leader, Joseph Stalin. It was too perfect for Hitler to pass up. On July 25, 1942, German Air Division Luftwaffe 4 begins to bomb the city.
They do manage to control almost 90% of the city on November 19th, the day of the Soviet counteroffensive. The Russians now have a huge advantage over the Germans because the Russians are much more used to the cold weather. There were 1,011,000 Axis troops. For weapons, they had 675 tanks, 10,250 artillery, 732 planes, 402 of which were operational. The Soviet Union had 1,103,000 troops, 1,436 tanks, 15,500 artillery, and 1,115 planes at the beginning of the battle.
Wolfram von Richthofen was the commander of Luftwaffe 4 in June of 1942. Richthofen was told to send supplies using Luftwaffe 4 to the Germans down in Stalingrad. He managed to get 1,660,000 pounds of supplies to the soldiers in a 2-month period. That may seem like a success, but he also lost 500 of his airplanes and 1,000 men. Erich von Manstein. December 12th of 1942, Manstein led Operation Winter Storm, an attempt to pull German and Romanian soldiers out of Stalingrad before they all froze to death. This attempt was stopped 30 miles out of Stalingrad. Frederick Paulus, in January of 1942, was sent to Russia to try and take Stalingrad. After a year of pushing into Stalingrad, he was forced to surrender by the Soviets on January 31st of 1943, one day after he was promoted to General Field Marshal. Russian General Vasily Chirkov was the commanding general of the 62nd Army. They were the ones inside the city. Chirkov developed the hugging the enemy tactic, in which he and his men got so close to the Germans that no matter how much better of weaponry they had, he could still win using shovels, pitchforks, and bayonets as long as your leg. He also enjoyed luring the German panzer tanks into the rubble, and when they least expected, throwing Molotov cocktails down onto the tanks, destroying them and killing all German soldiers.
The weapons used in the Battle of Stalingrad were nothing other than barbaric. The Germans were using weapons they found because theirs were so unreliable. Some had to resort to entrenching tools and other heavy objects they could find. On the subject of new technologies, new ways of manufacturing arms was invented. Riveting, stamping, and welding were new and important innovations in manufacturing. This brought the idea of small arms, including submachine guns, assault rifles, the first of which was the STG-44, a German rifle. The assault rifle differed from submachine guns in their bullets. An AR used rifle bullets, while an SMG used smaller pistol bullets. The main weapon used by the Soviets was the PPSH-41 and the Mosin Nagant, and usually a revolver as a sidearm. For the Soviets, there was about 1 gun for every soldier. The Germans had it a little easier, as they could manufacture weapons quicker.
The Axis had 750,000 troops killed or wounded in the battle, 91,000 troops captured by the Soviets. The Axis also lost 900 aircraft to the Soviet Air Force. The Soviets had 478,741 soldiers either killed or missing, 650,878 wounded or sick, and more than 40,000 civilians killed in the battle. The Soviets also lost 2,769 aircraft and 4,341 tanks in the battle. The Battle of Stalingrad is the most important battle of the war because it was the first time during the war that the Axis had really lost a battle. Ever since the Battle of Stalingrad, the Russians kept gaining ground against the Germans until they reached Berlin in 1945. It was also a key battle for the Russians just to survive the war. If the Germans had won, Russia would have been doomed because of the importance of Stalingrad, which was a major industrial center that provided weapons and necessary tools and equipment for soldiers.